The Space Marines are the mightiest warriors of mankind, yet even they are not beyond the pull of zealotry, for in the grim darkness of the far future, faith is both a shield and a pyre. To understand how a Space Marine chapter becomes zealot, we must first acknowledge their origin. Each chapter is shaped by its gene seed, its homeworld, its history, and above all, its creed. While all Space Marines revere the Emperor, the way in which they do so can twist their purpose. Some see him as a distant ruler, others a god, and some, fueled by the fire of unrelenting faith, take the reverence to the extreme. Consider the Black Templars, forever on their crusade, refusing to accept the weakness of peace. To them, the Emperor's word is absolute law, and any deviation is heresy. They seek no compromise, no diplomacy, only the endless war against those who have defied him. Their zeal is not just belief, but the foundation of their very chapter. And while zealotry might seem as fanaticism, not all of it is born of corruption. It is often the result of necessity. A chapter brought to the brink of destruction may turn to blind faith as their only salvation. If a chapter master sees his world burned, his brothers slaughtered, he can cast aside reason and embrace the vengeance of the Emperor's divine will. The line between righteous fury and relentless fanaticism is thin, and once crossed, it can never be undone. But zealotry is a double-edged sword. It grants strength beyond measure, conviction that defies all doubt, but it's also blinding. Even the Ultramarines, paragons of order, have successors that fall to the lure of the unshakable belief. In the end, zealotry consumes. A chapter too consumed by faith may forsake reason, turn on allies, and wage wars that should never have been fought. They may see heresy where none exists, purge the innocent alongside the damned, and in a crusade of purity, lose themselves to the same madness they swore to fight. Such was the case for the Angel's Penitent, who started off as the Angel's Resplendent. Imperial records point to the existence of a loyalist successor chapter of the Blood Angels, known as the Angel's Resplendent. What made these scions of Sanguinius so special was that not one battle brother had ever succumbed to the genetic flaw that haunts the great Angel's children, the Black Rage. It is because of this that the chapter proudly wore its golden power armor, trimmed in silver and red, carrying their chapter badge of a hooded angelic figure with its arms raised and rejoiced with honor. While other chapters fought for glory or faith, the Angels Resplendent battled in order to attain perfection in life. This disciplined pursuit for perfection extended to every matter of life for the chapter. The Angels Resplendent were unique in that each battle brother viewed himself as a warrior artisan, crafting amazing works of art that decorated the chapter's fortress monastery of Canvalis. Each masterpiece displayed the battle brothers' individual skills and a rare appreciation for the aspects of human life beyond war. In the pursuit of their art, the Angels Resplendent believed that they were developing a discipline and an understanding of the broader needs of mankind that reinforced their commitment to the defense of humanity. This all changed when a mysterious individual, only referred to as the Undying Martyr, visited the chapter. The Undying Martyr was a mortal who had survived crossing the river Tristes that served as the moat of the Angels Resplendent's fortress monastery. Few Space Marines could have mastered the crossing of this river, and so it was a mystery how a mortal had achieved that feat. Instead of ending the stranger's life, the Undying Martyr was brought before Chaplain Icaros Malvoisin for interrogation. The chaplain conversed with the stranger for 19 solar days before proclaiming him a prophet of the God Emperor who bore terrible new insight into the Imperial Creed. These truths were dark indeed, for he revealed that mankind was corrupted beyond redemption, and that its greatest guardians, the Adeptus Astartes, were the base of all sinners, for they had faltered and fragmented in a war against the arch-betrayer Horus. There could be no hope for ascension into the Emperor's light, only penance and pain for humanity's collective sins of past and future. The war was already lost, and the only course was to fight in the knowledge of certain defeat. Thus began the Great Purge of the chapter, where all activities and items considered blasphemous, including many objects once crafted by the warrior artisans of the chapter themselves. Things might have been different if the Angels Resplendent chapter master, Varsiva Cervantes, had been with the chapter during this harrowing time, but the Knight Resplendent had been absent for many standard years, campaigning with the chapter's elite first company. There had been no word of them since the Great Purge, and the chaplain Malvoisin had declared them lost, though many within the chapter refused to believe it. The Knight Resplendent would return some day to reclaim and redeem his chapter. In the absence of the chapter master, only Chief Librarian Athenseos and his librarian brethren had denounced the Martyr's Testament, Inevitably, they were denounced as heretics, and soon those loyal battle brothers who followed the will of the chaplains obediently stormed the librarium, driven by a hatred for their kin that had been unmatched even in battles against Xenos. Athenzaeus and his followers had awaited their brother's assault, absent of arms and armor, yet shielded by a contempt that brought the zealot charge to a standstill. The attackers waited for the frigid electric tang that presaged a psychic assault, but when Athenzaeus spoke, he said only a sentence: "We will rise on burning wings." This assault was comprised of only words, but they were the chapter's credo, delivered with a conviction that drained the poison from many of the attacking battle brothers. It might have been enough to stop this madness, but then the chaplain bellowed a new credo, the one revealed by the undying martyred. The Emperor condemns. The angels resplendent died that day, and the angels penitent rose from their grave, shadow-bound and bitter. The chapter is now ruled by a council of zealot chaplains called the Crown of Thorns. They judge those amongst their brethren who they consider to have sinned against the Emperor, which includes such minor offenses as creating scrimshaws honoring the Primarch Sanguinius, for they believe that art exalted the tyranny of the sin of vanity. Some within the chapter still secretly harbor their distrust of this new order, clinging to the chapter's old identity, believing they were once warrior artisans before the outsiders enslaved them. They know in their heart that their true skills lie in the arm and art in harmony, the true path of the resplendent, but to voice such unpopular opinions is considered a sin in the eyes of the Crown of Thorns. Another worrying symptom of this new order is that the battle brothers of the chapter are now prone to falling victim to the Blood Angel's genetic curse, known as the Black Rage. It now appears that this curse flourishes freely enough to warrant the chapter raising a death company of its own. The chapter's heraldry has changed to black with streaks of umber. Their chapter badge is a large white skull with a gray crown of thorns upon its brow. The chapter did answer Dante's call for aid when facing High Fleet Leviathan's assault on Baal. It is unknown if the chapter survived the battle. Now let's take a look at another very zealot Space Marine chapter, the Fire Angels. The Fire Angels is a loyalist Space Marine chapter whose origins lie in the late 40th millennium, when they were created during the 25th founding by the orders of the High Lords of Terra. At their founding, the Fire Angels were granted fiefdom over the strategically important hive world of Loran Alpha, located in the western half of the Segmentum Solar. These Astartes do not specifically name their ancestral chapter, but their gene seed was sourced from the Ultramarine stock, while their initial command and training structures were composed of honored warriors drawn from several Ultramarine successor chapters. Their initiates were drawn from a mixture of Loran Alpha's military caste, who served in the Planetary Defense Force, and the violent kill gangs of the world's Underhive. Initiates are chosen through a thrice-annual process of trial by combat, fear, and endurance, known as the Test of Fire. The chapter's Master of Recruits conducts these series of bloody tournaments, and they are carried out under the supervision of the Fire Angels chaplain. Despite a history that spans less than 2,000 standard years, the Fire Angels have established themselves as a rising star amongst the most recently founded chapter of the Adeptus Astarte. Honorable to their allies and implicable to their foes, this chapter's valiant record may eclipse those chapters with more ancient heritage. The Fire Angels also worship the Emperor of Mankind as a god, practicing the imperial cult, which have won them political support within the ecclesiarchy and allies amongst the Cardinals Solar. As a result, the Fire Angels have fought successfully alongside the Sisters of Battle and on numerous wars of faith since their inception. Their aid is oftentimes actively sought out by the Synod of the Adeptus Ministorum, as well as the Ordo Hereticus of the Inquisition. Their brethren chapters view their close relationship with the Imperial Church as potentially compromising to the historical independence of the Space Marines, who have never deified the Emperor or seen the Primarchs as saints. There have been several attempts to hide the High Lords of Terra's involvement in the chapter's creation, but none can deny the favoritism showed by other Adepta towards the Fire Angels chapter. It is uncertain if the chapter is honor-bound in some way towards the service of these Imperial organizations, or if the special treatment is a way for them to bribe the chapter. Various battle brothers of the Fire Angels have received numerous citations and honors from the Lords of the Ministorum, something that very few other chapters would accept or even acknowledge. The chapter's warriors are often seen bearing various icons of the Imperial Creed upon their armor, as they fight the enemies of the Emperor. Stranger still is that despite being successor chapters drawn from the gene seed of the Ultramarines Legion, they do not consider their Primarch Guilliman to be anything more than an exceptional warrior. To this chapter, only the Emperor of Mankind and his saints are divine, and to proclaim or venerate otherwise is considered to be heresy. The Fire Angels choose to show their spiritual purity by wearing white power armor trimmed with red. Their chapter badge is a red cross lead, which is adorned on both shoulder blades, centered on a field of silver. Shaped by their earliest trials in combat, the Fire Angels have developed a preference for mobile mechanized deployment over the use of drop-out assaults or infiltrations when practical. This tactic is fed by the ability of the ancient manufactorums of their homeworld to turn out the venerable armored vehicle pattern chassis in the needed variant hulls. As a result, the Fire Angels' armory contains a large number of Predators, Whirlwinds, and Vindicare siege tanks than most established chapters. Compared to other Astartes, discipline and their holy duty to the divine emperor of mankind are higher virtues for the Fire Angels than the personal pursuit of glory. The chapter relies on proven strategic doctrines from which they seldom deviate, except in unusual circumstances. For example, they tend to regularly arm their tactical squads with heavy bolters for fire support and melta weapons for close-range anti-armor capabilities, while flamers see extensive use by their assault formations as a preferred anti-personnel weapon. One of the Fire Angels' favored martial traditions is the use of the sword in numerous forms, not only as a close combat weapon, but also a symbol of rank and spiritual strength within the chapter. Each battle brother considers his own blade as the incarnate force for their personal honor and prayer to the Emperor of mankind. The first notable engagement of the Fire Angels was the Fenrite Tithe War, a name that was later given to the Imperial Crusade launched against the long-burning civil war that had plagued the neighboring Kalsect, Nephthys, and Serusin sector. In their baptism of blood as a fully active chapter, the Fire Angels committed their full strength to the 3rd Imperial Interdiction Force under the command of Lord Militant Hellstorm. The Fire Angels were deployed to the heretical world of Jopal in the later years of the conflict in the 40th millennium to break the deadlock between the Imperial Guard forces on the vital industrial planet and the massed ranks of the rebel Juggernaut companies, the heretics being supplied with large quantities of battle tanks and field artillery from the planet's massive defense armories. The Fire Angels tipped the balance in the savage 3-year-long campaign, matching their swift-moving Predators and Razorbacks against the rebel-crewed Leman Russes and Malkador tanks in open battle on the ash plains of the planet, while their tactical and stern guard squads wreaked untold havoc in close-quarter fighting in the tangles and treacherous terrains of the planet's extensive shattered zones. Through a string of victories, the Fire Angels were instrumental in turning the tide of war for the Imperials and bringing the world back to the Imperial fold that had lain in the hands of the apostate for more than 3 Terran centuries. The Fire Angels remained active throughout the latter part of the Tithe Wars and gained noteworthy victories contesting the Orc incursions in the Vork subsector, where they held out against speed-freak hordes on lambast ends and struck deep into enemy-held territories to relieve the besieged ecclesiarchal shrine world of Lament. It was this last action fought against the nightmarishly powerful psychic cult forces of the 7 Daughters of Oblivion and their mind-slave followers, for which the chapter was awarded the high honor of the Order of the Martyr's Heart by the Holy Synod of Galthamor. The Fire Angels later participated in the battle for Grand Al Ghul against the Chaos Space Marine warband known as the Sanctified on the cemetery worlds of the Grand Al Ghul system at the behests of the Inquisition. The Fire Angels acquiesced to the Inquisition's request and diverted from their course to intercept with the powerful Chaos Warband. During this campaign against the Chaos Space Marines and their demonic minions, the Fire Angels blocked their efforts to desecrate the resting place of the honored Imperial dead and work hideous chaotic rituals in their ruins. These were fraught and brutal combats where not only the lives but the souls of the Space Marines were at stake. The Fire Angels Astartes succeeded in forcing their enemies to fight them in a series of assault and counter-assaults, with the Fire Angels maintaining disciplined order and using the cover provided by the marble forest of headstones and the maze of burial vaults to their advantage. The Sanctified responded with all foul sorceries at their command, liquefying stones with their dark magic and summoning rolling, chattering swarms of mindless demonic beasts to harrow those that would dare to oppose them. The Fire Angels chapter paid a heavy price in the short but savage combat before victory was achieved, including the martyrdom of the chapter master, Harren Stark, in the battle against the frost-rimmed greater demon of Tzeentch, known as the Lord of Change, while defending the sacred narthex of penitence and the self-immolation of the chief librarian, Matthias D., in order to avoid warp possession. Eventually their forces spent, the Sanctified were driven from the sacred site and routed from the system. Planned hypothesis of the sanctified arch-sorcerer Azrath Kol to demonhood utterly was thwarted. Following the corrupted Chaos Space Marine forces' defeat, Kol, a once favored champion of chaos, was assassinated by his own apprentice in a brutal power struggle to control the shattered remains of his decimated warband as they fled Grand Al Ghul. The chapter's last known major conflict is answering the Inquisition's call for aid when they arrived in Badab Sector with an effective force of 7 companies. The chapter's largest and most costly engagement was the battle for the world of Sagan. The Fire Angels' casualties on Sagan were such that they could no longer be deployed as frontline forces, and along with a contingent of the Sons of Medusa, were redeployed to carry out suppression campaigns in the Erimon cluster. After a series of brutal exterminations of the populations of several secessionist-held systems, carried out by the savage Carcharodon chapter, the Fire Angels voiced formal grievances against the Carcharodons with the Loyalist command. Reduced in strength, but refusing to back down from their position, the Fire Angels eventually withdrew from the Badab conflict, wishing to avoid any open conflict between the two chapters. Nevertheless, the Fire Angels will forever be honored for their skilled armored squadrons and their zealot fury in combat. If you guys want to check out more, check out the deep dive link in the description and subscribe to the channel for more Warhammer 40K lore. This was Gershwin with One Mind Syndicate signing out.